There's a Charles Ponzi that is born in Luga, Emilia-Romagna, which is an area in northern Italy. He's born March 3rd, 1882. Now let's think of his family. His ancestors were actually quite well-to-do. Like, they were pretty wealthy, but by this time the family has fallen upon hard times and they pretty much don't have much money. So Charles, let's fast forward a little bit. Let's just imagine he doesn't have much money, or his family doesn't have much money, but let's fast forward to his late teens. He takes a job as a postal worker, hoping that maybe this will be a way that he can bring in some money for the family, maybe save up for college, and they're successful enough to the point where he can, at least, they gain a little bit of money to the point where they are able to get him into college, right? So he goes to a university named University of Rome, La Sapienza, and Charles is happy. He's happy to be there, but he's even happier to spend time with his friends. So as a result, he hangs out with his friends a lot. He goes to bars, goes to cafes, goes to operas with them. And 4 years pass, Charles doesn't even graduate, and he doesn't have any money. But despite this, Charles remains optimistic because he notices something. He notices that a lot of Italian boys are actually moving to the United States, and they return wealthy and posh. So he's like, you know what? Maybe I can do the same. So he tells his mother, he tells his family, hey, I think I need to go to the United States. I know I didn't do so well in college or with the whole college thing here, but I think if I go to the United States, that'll be my bounce back. Mother and the family says, you know what, Charles? It's a great idea. Go ahead and do it. And then you can come back and you will be just like a lot of Italian boys, bringing honor to their family and also bringing some money, right? What's to lose? So Charles arrives in Boston and he boarded the SSS Vancouver, which is like one of those large ships that can transport people, right? So he boards this large ship November 15, 1903. At this time, Charles is 21 years old. He only has $250 in his pocket, which is the equivalent to like $87 in 2024, because most of his money, unfortunately, he gambled it away as he was on his trip. Charles was optimistic, so perhaps he was thinking, I can double my money before I arrive to the US. So I'll play this game with you guys and I'll take your money and I'll have a lot more money. Fortunately, Charles lost all of his money, or at least some of it. So he arrives with little money, but he has these rich hopes. I'm finally here. I can make tons of money here. This is the place to do it. So he quickly learns English. He spends the next few years doing odd jobs in the East Coast, right? Still being hopeful, thinking I'm waiting for my shot. He eventually lands a job as a dishwasher in a restaurant. And since he still has little money, he's sleeping on the floors of this restaurant at night. So it seems like Charles has a drive. Like, even though he may fall on unfortunate times or hard times, he still believes in perseverance enough to push forward. He manages to work his way up in this restaurant or at this restaurant. He works up to a waiter, but unfortunately, Charles is fired for theft and shortchanging customers. So let's fast forward a bit. By 1907, Charles is now 25. He says, you know what? Okay, the United States is actually tougher than I thought. This is not so easy to make a lot of money here. Let me jump ship and go to Canada. So he moves to Montreal. At this point, he has a winning personality. He can speak several languages, English, Italian, French, and that enables him to land a pretty decent job. He lands a job as an assistant teller at a newly opened bank called Banco Sarosi. He thinks this is a huge opportunity for him. This bank is the bank that deals with the influx of Italian immigrants moving into this area. And he and a lot of other people notice that this bank is paying about 6% interest on bank deposits, which is double the going rate at this time. So, I mean, what can be better? I mean, he's going to a bank that is only growing and becoming more successful, that caters to people he's familiar with. What can be better than that? Eventually, Charles rises to bank manager here. he's very much so bought into this bank.
Without any education.
Well, I mean, it's,
It's those days. Okay.
exactly. It's not, it's not so credentialed back then,
All right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But he finds something kind of strange. He finds out, actually, this bank is not doing as well as I thought. Actually, this bank is doing horrible. This bank is in serious financial trouble because of bad real estate loans. And this bank, Banco Sarosi, is actually funding the interest payments not through profit on investments, but by using the money deposited in newly opened accounts. What? This is weird, right? So Banco Sarosi eventually fells, and the founder of that bank flees to Mexico with a large portion of the bank's money. Charles, he decides to actually stay in Montreal, and actually he moves in with the founder's family because he believes that, I want to help them out, try to help them make it through this part. And during this time that I'm staying with them, I can plan my trip back to the States. All right, so it's kind of a win-win. I help you out, and then you guys help me out. But unfortunately, Charles is still somewhat broke, and so this was kind of difficult for him. This is difficult, right? But as he's still living in Montreal with the family, where he's at in life basically influences him to walk into an office of a former Banco Sarosi customer. And one of their customers is Canadian Warehousing. He walks in this office, but he finds no one there. And instead of just leaving, Charles starts wandering around and he stumbles upon a checkbook. So Charles thinks to himself, this is actually a great opportunity to write myself $123.58 check, which is approximately $14,355 now. And he forges the signature of a director that works at the company, because he knows them, right? He used to work with them. So he forges the signature and he cashes it. Unfortunately, the police, they figured it out because of basically like his purchases. They realize, wait, who is that person purchasing this? Who's this? Like
He didn't cash out as in, what do you mean purchases?
He's buying extravagant things that are
But
like
still,
making
you said
him
that
noticeable.
I thought that he just went and cashed out the check and he had cash and he was using the cash to buy stuff.
Yeah, he cashed the check and he used that money, the money he cashed, to buy things. So when you do that,
but if he bought using cash, how was he?
it doesn't matter. People will look and say, you don't make that much money. That's like someone who makes $50,000 a year, all of a sudden they end up with a mansion and a Lamborghini. People are going to say, $50,000 a year doesn't get you this. Where's that money coming from? That's the whole point of money laundering, right? You're not getting paid this much money. At least that's not what we know. So that gets him attention. And instead of fighting this, Charles actually holds his hands out and says, you know what? You got me. I'm guilty. He ultimately serves a 3-year sentence at St. Vincent de Paul Federal Penitentiary. It's a desolate facility located on the outskirts of Montreal. So by this time, his family's like, all right, so Charles, how's everything going, right? And he writes his mother, everything's going okay. I got a job working as a special assistant to a prison warden. There's no way I'm telling my mother I came all this way only to land in prison.
I know.
There's no way. But let's fast forward to when he gets out. Charles is released in 1911. He's now 29. He's still young, right? And he still has high hopes. And he says, you know what? Let me return to the United States. I'll find another job. I'll do whatever it takes to actually get on the right path again. Unfortunately, he finds himself trying to help immigrants, Italian or illegal Italian immigrants, crossing or to help them cross the U.S. border. It was that tough.
He's trying a lot of
He's
things.
trying to do it, right? He's trying. So he finds out there's money in this and he jumps into it. Unfortunately, Charles is caught once again. He spends 2 years in the Atlanta prison.
Now it's 5. He has wasted 5 years.
But the good thing about this sentence is he learns how to become a translator by working under a warden at that prison.
Translator.
He's intercepting letters from a mobster Ignazio the Wolf Lupo. And that's basically how he learns how to be a translator. He obviously knows Italian and English, so that's perfect for him, right? And the odd thing is he actually starts being friends with this mobster. And he befriends another prisoner as well by the name of Charles W. Morse. Charles W. Morse is a businessman who committed several counts, or who was convicted for several counts of fraud and corruption. But Charles looks at Charles W. Morse, if we want to call him by his last name, Morse. He looks at him as a role model. You are very successful.
Successful?
You were very successful.
Oh my goodness.
But one of the reasons why he admired him, or he admires him, is because Morse was able to get himself out of prison. Before Morse had a medical exam, he decided to eat soap shavings. So he shaved soap and he ate those shavings, which made him seem ill. It made him look very ill. And during the medical exam, they're like, oh my goodness, you're so sick. You look like you're about to die or something. They release him soon after that. Charles is like, wow, you are impressive. But Charles is finally released. Now he's in his early 30s. And he's like, you know what? Let me make my way back to the East Coast, back to Boston. And he does find work. He finds work working at a mining camp as a nurse.
He has so many job experiences. He has a lot of job experiences. What?
And during this time, he comes up with another idea to start a utility company for another mining camp. And once when he starts a utility company, he'll start selling the stock for that utility company. But there was an incident that went on where that happened to another fellow nurse. Charles doesn't know this nurse, but he hears about this nurse that had like a freak accident where her skin was basically stripped. Like it was a really bad accident that stripped her skin off her body, like a good amount of skin. And Charles is like, you know what? I'll be one of the volunteers. 2 major operations to donate 122 square inches of my own skin from my back and legs to her. I feel so bad. I'll donate my skin. Unfortunately, this results in Charles getting pleurisy, which is like a disease, and other complications from this. I mean, obviously, just by the way of it sounding, it sounds like you would get some kind of disease, especially during this time.
Yeah.
Charles can't do the job anymore. So he gets fired because he has these diseases. He's unable to work as a nurse. So although it was a really good deed, it knocked him out of position. So now Charles is wandering through Boston again, looking for a job. Though this time things are a bit different. He meets a young lady named Rose Maria Gnecco. She's a stenographer who comes from an Italian-American immigrant family. The family, they own a small fruit stall in downtown Boston. And Charles really likes this woman. He likes her so much to the point that he will do anything possible to not tell her that he's been to jail before. Because this may scare her off, obviously. But through communication with his mother finds out who she is. And ultimately, the mother, Charles' mother, tells Rose, hey, I know you are kind of talking to my son, but I just want you to know he has a past. He has been to jail before several times.
So the mom finally knew.
Yes.
Even if he wanted to say, oh, I'm working at the prison.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
She finally found out. But despite this, Rose says, you know what? I'll still agree to marry you. So they get married in 1918 when Charles is 36 years old. For the next few months, Charles works at a number of businesses, including the father-in-law's grocery store, an import-export company, J.R. Poole. And as he's working these jobs, he comes up with another idea to sell advertising in a large business listing, which can be sent to a variety amount of businesses. Unfortunately, he's unable to sell this idea to businesses and his company fails. But his wife's family is able to help him out and say, hey, why don't you just take over the fruit company? But Charles falls short on his luck once again, and that company fails. He's not giving up though. He keeps thinking back to that idea. America, I can make money and I can return to Italy, proudly to my family, right? So he doesn't give up. So he sets up a small office at 27 School Street in Boston in the summer of 1919. He attempts to sell business ideas to contacts in Europe. But one day he receives a letter from a company in Spain, and they ask about the advertising log, which includes an international reply coupon. In short, it's IRC. It is this experience that enables Charles to find a weakness in the system, and he believes he can make money this way. So let me give you a little bit of context about international reply coupons, or IRCs, right? Or that whole, how that whole thing worked. Postal reply coupons allow a person in one country to pay for the postage of a reply to a correspondent in another country. International reply coupons are priced at the cost of a postage in the country of purchase, but could be exchanged for stamps to cover the cost of postage in the country where redeemed. If these values are different, there is a potential for profit. And it also helps that inflation after World War I greatly decreased the cost of postage in Italy compared to US dollars. So an IRC could be bought cheaply in Italy and exchanged for US stamps of higher value, which can ultimately be sold. This is a form of profiting by buying an asset at a lower price in one market and immediately selling it in a market where the price is higher, which is legal. That's totally legal. So Charles sees the opportunity and he quits like a side job that he was also working as a translator, because he's like, this is something I need to put a lot of focus in. The only thing Charles needs capital to start buying a lot of IRCs at a lower performing European currency. So he first tries to borrow money from several banks, but none of them are convinced. They're like, no, I'm sorry, who are you? Have you even ran a successful business before? No, I'm sorry. Your background is this or that. No. Your credentials don't look well enough for us to take a risk on you. But this prompts Charles to think differently. And suddenly Charles comes up with the idea to set up a stock company to raise money from the public. And he also goes to several of his friends in Boston and promises that he will double their investment in 90 days in an environment when banks are only paying 5% annual interest. So that's a lot of a return. That's a huge return.
Yeah.
So he explains that the great returns from postal reply coupons make such an incredible profit, and it's easy to do. This is easy to accomplish. So you should invest in this. You'll be missing out. People buy into his pitch and they invest. Subsequently after, they are paid as promised, receiving $750, which is basically $13,370 today, and interest on initial investments of $1,250 or $1,250, which is approximately $22,284 in today's cash. By January 1920, Charles starts his own company. He calls it the Securities Exchange Company. And this is a vehicle to promote the IRC idea more effectively. In the first month, 18 people invest in his company with a total of $1,800, so $32,089. He pays them promptly the very next month with the money obtained from a newer set of investors. Charles sets up a larger office, this time in the Niles building on School Street, and the word spreads and investments increase rapidly. Charles starts hiring agents and pays them generous commissions. Between February and March of 1920, the total amount invested rises from $5,000 or $89,000 to $25,000 or $445,000. As the company grows, Charles hires agents to seek out new investors in New England and New Jersey. At this time, investors are paid impressive rates, which subsequently encourage others to invest. Everybody's like, this is hot.
Wow.
Did you hear that you can make a lot of money
know.
if you buy into this company? Did you hear that? Let me do it. Let's do it. By May 1920, Charles has already made $420,000, equivalent to $7.4 million
Wow.
in 2024.
Wow.
By June 1920, people have invested $2.5 million in the company, equivalent to $38 million. Now, by July, Charles is getting $1 million per day. He starts depositing the money in the Hanover Trust Bank of Boston, which is a bank that actually rejected him initially, right? It's a small bank in a mostly Italian North End area. And he has the hopes that once his account is large enough, he can impose his will on this bank and even be made president.
He had dreams. He had dreams.
So in the meantime, he buys a controlling interest in the bank through himself and his friends after depositing $3 million. Meanwhile, some of his investors mortgage their homes and invest their life savings. Most are not even taking their profits.
They're
reinvesting
the profits. They're like, keep it.
The company continues to profit and sets up branches in Maine, Jersey, other areas in the Northeast. Charles' initial investors consist of working class immigrants like himself. Gradually, though, the company is able to draw like well-to-do Boston families, right? So it's like we're getting a variety of people. Like this is a lot, right? Company is so successful that 75% of the police force invested in it. Among the investors are even those closest to Charles. His chauffeur.
He had
and his brother-in-law
at that time.
His brother-in-law and chauffeur invest in this company. He doesn't care who invests. He even allows young children, like newspaper boys. Hey, do you want a company to invest in right now? Go ahead. Pitch in this money if you want. Go ahead.
Anyone and everyone can do it.
Yes. High net worth individual out of the Northeast, all the way in Kansas, invests $10,000 or $154,000 into the company. Charles is still paying back the investors, mostly from the subsequent investors he receives.
Oy.
He has not even figured out a way to actually change the IRCs to cash. He subsequently realizes that changing the coupons to money is logistically impossible. For example, let's imagine this. The initial 18 investors of January 1920, for their investment of $1,800, it would take 53,000 postal coupons to actually realize the profits for those people to get paid out. For the subsequent 15,000 investors, he would have to fill Titanic-sized ships with postal coupons to ship them to the US from Europe in order to make a profit for those investors. Charles finds that all the interest payments return to him as investors continue to reinvest.
So where is the profit coming from? There's no profit because it's just he's just paying people up from whatever comes in. He pays people yada yada yada. As in, take this, give this, make this look so good, make them happy so that they put it back in, and then more people come and use their money to pay this ones off, and then just doing this. He does not even know what he's doing. Of course he wouldn't know. He didn't go to school for anything. He's just trying out. It's guesswork.
It's working, right?
And these people stupid.
Well, I don't want to judge, but it's a variety of people, right? If you're talking about wealthy, they're buying into it too.
This is like a Ponzi scheme.
But it's
this is just like like there is nothing.
So Charles lives in luxury. He buys a mansion in Lexington, Massachusetts. He maintains accounts in several banks across New England besides Hanover Trust. He buys a locomobile, which is the finest car at this time. He purchases 2 first-class tickets to Italy for a delayed honeymoon with Rose, his wife, but instead decides to change them to bring his mother from Italy to the U.S. in a first-class stateroom on an ocean liner.
Ooh.
She lives with Charles and Rose for some time in Lexington until she passes away. By July 31st, Charles also buys a macaroni company and part of a wine company in an attempt to gain profits that could be used to repay the investors of his IRC scheme. So he's thinking about it.
He's trying.
He's thinking about it in the back of his head. Oh crap.
I need to make payment.
I need to start actually extending some money to these people, real money, right? But his rapid success draws suspicion.
But let me ask, these people who are getting these profits, they were not getting it in form of money. They were getting it in form of money.
Yes. But think about it. If no one's asking for their money, right?
So they've just been
so
told,
it's almost like
you gained 100,000.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like you gaining a sheet every day.
Yeah.
Oh, your money has doubled. Oh, your money has doubled. Oh, I'll just
And
keep
you're
it
like,
in. I'm just going to keep it in.
Yeah.
Just reinvest all that money. Reinvest it.
There are no people
And
who asked for real cash back.
Not really.
They were like, this is an investment.
For the most part, everybody's saying, just reinvest my funds. I'm good.
Because
just reinvest
everyone wants to be rich. They're like, yeah, why should I pull it?
They're thinking, hey, honey, do you see that right now we have 2,000? Imagine what it will be next week. It'll probably be 5,000. If we leave it in for another 3 months, it'll probably be 50,000. Based on our returns, our returns are upwards to 90%. This is crazy. But this rapid success draws some suspicion. And it's when a Boston financial writer suggests that there is no way Charles could legally return such amount in a short period of time like that. Charles sees this and he's like, let me sue you. And he wins $500,000 in damages. This is the first real person that has come forward. Right? So at this time, just think about any other figure that's been accused of scamming or corruption. The first, it's like someone who's all of a sudden they're admired, right? The first person who tries to come at them, everyone's like, no, you're wrong, shut up. And they agree with him.
Yeah.
Right? So he's like, let me sue you and I'll win this. Right? They agree with him. They give him the $500,000. For a bit, this neutralizes any serious probing into his dealings for some time. But nonetheless, Joseph Daniels, a Boston furniture dealer, who in the past gave Charles some furniture, but he was never paid, sues Charles because he's like, all right, I see that you're doing well with this business. I'm going to try to cash in on this. This is a perfect time. You haven't paid me money. Let me cash in. But the lawsuit is unsuccessful. But it does prompt some questions.
Why didn't he
pay? Well, it kind of brings up that thing of you went from penniless to a millionaire in a short span of time. It's like his name is recycled once again about becoming rich in such a short period of time.
But also I have a question. He hired people to work, right?
Yeah.
So these people, because they're being paid, they're in on it. They know what's
They're not
happening.
in on it. It's almost like your boss is writing you a check. Well, you don't know where that money's really coming from.
But if they are working for the company, their work is to just bring people.
Yes.
And the one who deals with saying, oh, it has doubled, it's their actual owner, him.
Yes, basically.
So no one else knows.
No one else. All right, think about it. He only has people to go spread the word, basically. They're just, go get these people.
So
go get these
for
people.
him, he has just a list with names of people. This week he can just say, oh, this person, 10%. This person, you gained 20%.
Basically.
Okay.
Right?
I thought that it's like an office that people are just there and they're colluding and they know, wow.
So this second, I should say, the person that basically tried to sue him, or basically tried to get money out of Charles, that whole incident kind of makes some investors a bit skeptical. They're like, all right, this is the second thing talking about your quick rise of becoming a millionaire, and this is, honey, maybe we should pull out. No, maybe we got a good amount of money from this company. It's like 8,000. Maybe we should sell, right? Maybe this is a good time to sell. But Charles says, no, don't sell, right? Just stay in. And in fact, he actually pays them some money to stay invested in for the most part. He pays them. And that quickly calms that down. But by July 24th, 1920, the Boston Post prints a favorable article on Charles. And it's about how the scheme brought in so many investors very fast, right? Faster than ever. And this looks good on Charles's part, right?
They said scheme, per se, or they just said how the business.
Basically business. How the business is doing so well and it was able to bring investors in so fast with the high return. This makes him look very, very good. And the whole article basically implies that he's returning about 50% on each investment. And like right below that, just imagine right below that article in that same newspaper, like a little bank advertisement is saying, hey, we're returning 5%. So it's like, this looks really good, right? Like you're reading about someone who's able to provide you with 50%
and down there
in comparison to the traditional model, which is a bank at this time,
and
right?
It's
5%.
You're like, I'm going for the 50%. There's no way
Yes.
I'm doing 5%.
Yes. So the next business day, after the article is published, Charles goes back to his office and he arrives with thousands of people in Boston waiting to give Charles their money. They're like, here, take my money. I'm trying to get in on that return as well, right? I saw the ad. 50%, dude, take my money.
I want it.
You can take my 100. Take my 2,000.
Yeah.
Take my 5,000. You're going to return 50% anyway.
Yeah.
But let's jump to another newspaper company, just called The Post. Post acting publisher Richard Grozier and city editor Eddie Dunn are very suspicious. They're so suspicious that they're like, let me assign some investigative reporters to look into Charles. This is just, I'm sorry, but
it's too good to be true.
Yeah, this is a little too good to be true. So during this time, also, Charles is under investigation by Massachusetts authorities. So it's like, as a lot of your average day, or not even average day people, but like non-investigative people, right? Because usually journalists are investigative and, municipal position people are very much so investigative. That's just the nature of both of their jobs, is to ask questions and ask very good ones. Right? And there was a day where the Post prints an article, and it happens to be the same day that Charles meets state officials. And to kind of cover that meeting first, he meets with them and they're like, yeah, we're kind of skeptical of this whole thing, to be honest. But he manages to divert the officials from checking his books by offering to stop taking money during the whole investigation. So it's like, all right, I understand you guys want to investigate me. I will completely stop taking people's money, right? I will completely stop, I promise. And this kind of distracts them a bit. This kind of makes them feel like, all right, like if you're willing to stop taking their money, maybe you're not as
hiding.
maybe you're not as like as much of a scammer as we think. Maybe you really don't have that much to hide. So the state officials on that side of the coin, it's like, all right, we're kind of calm now, right? But by July 26th, the Post starts a series of articles that ask very hard questions about the operation of Charles' money machine. The paper, or I should say the Post, contacts Clarence Barron, the financial journalist who heads Dow Jones and Company. And they basically ask him to examine Charles's business, because they're like, we're not financial professionals, but we can contact someone who's very much so into the financial sector, who's really experienced in this. So Barron finds that Charles is definitely offering great returns on investments, but there's something strange. Charles, why aren't you investing in your own company? And he notes that to cover the investments made with the Securities Exchange Company, Charles's company, 160 million postal reply coupons would have to be in circulation. However, only about 27,000 are actually in circulation at this time. How are you doing that? The United States Post Office even states that postal reply coupons are not being brought in such a quantity at home or abroad. This is not checking out. So basically the gross profit margin in percent on buying and selling each IRC is colossal.
You have to explain this to us in a more detailed way. Like,
what do you mean?
I get what you're saying, but I want you to print the picture. Those postal things. Just explain it.
Basically, I will kind of put it in this way first. So the product Charles is claiming that he can make a profit on, or at least enough of a profit to pay you a significant percentage, there is not enough of that profit in order to turn out
no much of that product itself, not profit, right?
Yes, product itself enough to turn out such a high investment.
So let's say if there were 20 cans, but he said that there are 50 cans.
It's almost like he's promising that, trust me, I know this market so much that if I tell you there are 50,000 cans out there, there are 50,000. And if there are 50,000, you can make X amount of profit.
But in actuality, the only cans that are there are 10, for instance.
Right. So there's not even enough
cans
to make you a profit.
Yeah, so people are paying for the 50,000.
Or not make you a profit, but make you that much of a return, I should say.
So people are paying for the 50,000 that's out there, but actually, there isn't anything.
Yes. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
So it's like, in other words, it's like this, to kind of expand on that. So to put it this way, it's not that the percentage is fake. If he reduced the amount of investors, say if he only had 2 investors and he said you can make 50% profit, that is possible. But what is 50% of the profit? It could be $5, right? 50% of $5, right? That could just be the return. So it's not that the percentage is fake. It's the amount of which the percentage is coming from.
That product itself is not even there.
It's not in circulation enough to get you that much of a return. Not the 50% return, but the thousands on top of thousands, right? So once we convert the percentage into real money, how much is that? That's where it's fake. That actual dollar amount. How are you doing that?
Yeah.
There's not enough of this.
I know. Yeah.
So does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Barron continues to note that if Charles is really doing what he claims, he would be profiting at the expense of the government. Either the governments where he bought the coupons from or the US government, and for this reason, Barron argues that even if Charles's operation is legitimate, it is definitely immoral because it is taking advantage of governments. The Post says, Barron, thank you so much. We're going to post this. Or we're going to publish. I should say it like that. We're going to publish this article. And this article just causes chaos. Bunch of people are trying to run out of this now. But Charles is like, hey, I'll pay out money. He pays out $2 million in 3 days to a wild crowd that is outside of his office trying to get their money out.
Yeah.
And during this time, he's also passing out donuts and coffee. Hey, relax. I'll pay you guys $2 million. I'm paying you guys $2 million back. Don't worry.
Nothing to worry about.
He tells them, don't worry. It's okay. And ultimately, it works. He changes their minds. They keep their money in. And they're like, honey, everything is fine. He gave us donuts and coffee, and he also gave us money. I think we're fine. We'll leave our money in. We're fine. We trust him. Why would he give us money? Why would he give us donuts and coffee if he's such a crook? Let's keep our money in. But this attracts the attention of Daniel Gallagher, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts. Gallagher commissions Edwin Pride to audit the Securities Exchange Company's books. But this is difficult because Charles, his bookkeeping system consists merely of index cards of the investors' names. But in the meantime, as all this is blowing up, or all this news is coming out, being spread, people are looking into him, Charles is like, let me hire a publicist. Maybe the publicist can help.
With his image.
The publicist quickly becomes suspicious of Charles. Because all he talks about is postal reply coupons, and this publicist also hears about the investigations, and he's like, this is weird. Like, I don't know, something's off about this guy. He's like, this guy doesn't even give me an impression of being financially smart. He actually gives me this impression of the inverse. He seems like an idiot financially. How is this guy so successful? How is this whole thing successful?
I know.
So let's think of a more intense investigation. A more intense investigation kicks off in late July on Charles. And this
Still
is
1920. As in, the company has not even been there for too long.
And this is when the publicist finds several highly incriminating documents that indicates Charles is merely robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
Gotta let that breathe a little bit.
I know.
So the publicist goes to Grozier, the acting publisher of the Post. The publicist is actually a former employee of the Post.
So why did this guy
So he gives him that information.
So why did he hire...
Charles doesn't know. He doesn't know.
But the work of the publicist is to work for him and not to work...
He's like, I don't even like you.
Tough stuff. He's like, you've been robbing people, there is no way.
Something is not right with you. I don't like you, man.
Oh my goodness.
So Grozier offers him $5,000 for his story. And this is printed in the Post, August 2nd, 1920. The article declares Charles as hopelessly insolvent, reporting that while he claims $7 million in liquid funds, he is actually at least $2 million in debt. And with interest factored in, Charles is as much as $4.5 million in debt. The story starts a massive run from the company, and he pays them off in one day. Again, he tries that same tactic. I will pay you money in one day. And he then speeds up a plan to build a massive conglomerate company to engage in banking and in import and export operations. So he's like, I need to quickly get out of this. Like, let me start a company or other companies that can do other things to get heat off of this one company. This is bringing in too much heat. But the Massachusetts Bank Commissioner, Joseph Allen, becomes concerned. He's concerned that if the major withdrawals exhaust Charles' reserves, it will bring Boston's banking system to its knees. Allen's suspicions are further aroused when he finds a larger number of Charles' controlled accounts received more than $250,000 in loans from Hanover Trust.
So, what was Charles doing with just living lavishly with people's money?
Yeah. I mean, he's putting it in certain banks, but for the most part, he's like living with it. He's living with this money.
He's just enjoying the
he's trying to.
Tried what?
He's trying to buy into. He's trying to buy into a macaroni company, a wine company. He's trying to start other companies with this money.
He does not know anything about anything. Even if the American dream is that big, it's not that big.
So this leads Commissioner Joseph Allen to speculate that Charles is actually not as nearly well financed as he claims. Because I mean, why are you getting
go to school?
Yeah, it's like, why are you getting large loans from a bank? So he's
just
like,
because he worked at a bank and did nothing and did a bunch of things is he qualified to handle
It's
people's...
the idea they bought it.
Yeah, that's how people are scammed though, because they buy the idea rather than seeing the bigger picture. Like, does this really work?
But did you catch that? So the commissioner is worried because he finds that Charles is borrowing from the company he largely controls, the bank he largely controls. So you're getting loans from that bank, but you have a lot of money, I thought. What's going on? So he then orders 2 bank examiners to keep a close eye on Charles' account. By August 9th, the examiners report that enough investors have cashed their checks on Charles' main account and that the funds are almost certainly overdrawn. So basically, there's just not money here. So Commissioner Allen orders Hanover Trust not to pay out any more checks from Charles' main account there. He also orchestrates an involuntary bankruptcy filing by several small investors into the company. This move forces the Massachusetts Attorney General J. Weston Allen to release a statement that there is little to support Charles's claim of large-scale dealings in postal coupons. State officials then invite Charles's note holders to come to the Massachusetts State House to furnish their names and addresses for the purpose of the investigation. On that same day, though, Charles receives a preview of Pride's audit. Remember the auditor? He receives a preview into this audit. And this audit reveals that Charles is at least in $7 million in debt. By August 11th, the Post publishes a front page story about Charles and his criminal activities in Montreal 13 years earlier. And they include the detail of the bank he used to work for. And the forgery conviction. Remember his forgery conviction?
The $400.
Yes. That afternoon, Bank Commissioner Allen seizes Hanover Trust because this whole thing is just getting really sticky. Seize that whole bank that they're trying to borrow money from. Seize that whole thing. Stop it. The commissioner foils Charles's plan to borrow funds from the bank, which is basically like that last resort for obtaining funds. So that whole thing fails. The following day, Charles' certificate of deposit at Hanover Trust, which is about $1.5 million, reduces to $1 million after officials tap into it for the overdraft. I know I'm going into a lot of financial details, but I'm just going over these details because it shows how much of the collapse it is, right? This is a major collapse. Everything from one end to the next is like falling.
Yeah.
All the things that I'm saying is negative, right? So Amity reports that he was arrested in the past and, the bank that he used to work for, the forgery.
It's like he has been learning these things since 13 years ago from the bank he worked at, because that person ran with people's money.
That's the key detail that I wanted you to pick up.
Yeah.
Charles learns this from the bank that he worked at first.
Yeah. And then when he went to prison, he learned his mentor, in quotes, was a fraudulent person.
Yes.
So it's like he's been learning and he admired these people who did wrong things.
It's because he saw them winning from it. The person who started that bank fled to Mexico with all the money. The person who was a fraud in prison got himself out by being a fraud by being more of a fraud. So he's seeing it as, you can kind of think of it like, dude, I've been trying to work on the legal side. I can't stay anywhere. Nothing is working.
I know he tried, but then again, you can't try by trying also to lie. Those two things don't go together. Should have been upfront from when it started. But he's trying. Yes, we can see he tried to be a nurse, he tried to work as a teller, he tried to be a translator even in prison, but still No, it's not the right way. He tried businesses which failed. What was the problem? He tried, but the problem is he's also uneducated. He does not have information on how to...
So you're saying he needed knowledge?
Yes, he needed knowledge.
Because he didn't graduate.
Yeah, he needed knowledge so as to know how to do things. His mentality at this point, it seems like he's like, this thing is easy. This person did it. I can do it. I just need to. But he does not have the core knowledge to actually
execute something.
Yes. So he didn't try enough. He didn't actually try. He should have learned.
Well, I think he's tried the quick dollar. Quick dollar, so because even when you try to get the knowledge, that takes time. A lot of people aren't patient. So they're like, no.
You have to put in the work to get something.
I want results now. That's why people buy into a lot of things now, right? You hear enough things about it on the internet, I need to buy. Oh, Elon Musk tweeted that this cryptocurrency is going to the moon. I need to buy it right now. I could make a lot of money.
You have to actually put in the effort to make something work.
Some people aren't like that. So, during the reports about all of this stuff, Charles surrenders to the federal authorities and accepts that Pride's audit is correct. All the figures that he said, fine. Those are all true. That's correct. So, Charles is charged with mail fraud for sending letters to the investors telling them that their notes have been maturing. So basically telling them that you have been making money when in fact you have not been making money. So he says, all right, I'll accept that, right? So he's charged with mail fraud.
He's always quick to accept.
He's released on bail for $25,000, but immediately he's arrested again on state charges of larceny for additional $10,000 in bond. And after the Post releases the results of the audit, the bail bondsman fears Charles might flee the country and withdraw all the bail for the federal charges. So Attorney General Allen declares that if Charles manages to regain his freedom, the state will seek additional charges and seek a bond high enough to ensure Charles would stay in custody. The news of Charles and the truth behind his company brings down 5 other banks in addition to Hanover Trust. Charles' investors are basically wiped out, receiving less than 30 cents to the dollar. They lose about $20 million, which approximately today, that's about $308 million, which is a ton of money. 2 federal indictments are issued to Charles, and they charge him with 86 counts of mail fraud and life imprisonment. Rose, Charles's wife, urges him to plead guilty, thinking that, hey, maybe this will help with the sentencing. And he pleads guilty on November 1st, 1920, to a single count before Judge Clarence Hell. Charles is sentenced to 5 years in federal prison because he pleaded guilty. That helped him. 3 years later, Charles is released and is almost immediately indicted on 22 state charges of larceny. And this surprises Charles. He's like, no.
I've already served time.
For this thing. Like, you guys already took me. Like, I was already sentenced for this. Like, so he's like, no, I pleaded guilty to these charges and I'm going to actually sue you guys. Because I'm going to say that you guys this is double jeopardy. You guys are trying to charge me on the same thing twice. I'm going to sue you guys. So he sues the state of Massachusetts, and this goes to the U.S. Supreme Court. By March 27th, 1922, the Supreme Court rules that federal plea bargains have no standing regarding state charges. They also rule that Charles is not facing double jeopardy because Massachusetts is charging him with larceny, while the federal government charged him with mail fraud. Even though the charges implicated the same criminal operations, they're still different.
It's low.
It is law. Unfortunately, it is law.
They just switch
They know how the perfect squeeze into a different thing. So by October 1922, Charles is tried on the first 10 larceny counts. Since he's basically insolvent, he has no money basically, he serves as his own attorney. And he speaks as persuasively as he did to the investors, right? Yeah. He knows how to talk.
He's now an attorney. Okay.
He's acquitted on all charges.
Wow, this person had a talent. I wish he could have just gone to school. He had a talent.
But he is tried a second time on 5 of the remaining charges. And the jury's deadlocked this time. They can't even agree on a verdict. He talks so well.
I know.
There's no way this...
I can only imagine this.
Right. There's no way. I don't think we should... We shouldn't charge him for this. Do you hear what he's saying? Come on. He has already served. He made that clear. He served time. Why?
And he said that he was guilty. He said he was guilty.
Ultimately, Charles is found guilty at a third trial. And he's sentenced to an additional 7 to 9 years in prison. And they say, he's a common and notorious thief. Sentence him. During this time, there are also efforts to deport him as an undesirable alien. By September 1925, Charles is released on bail as he appeals the state conviction. He flees to a Springfield neighborhood in Jacksonville, Florida, and he launches a kind of like another company. And this time,
not giving up.
This time he seeks to capitalize on the Florida land boom. So it's like he's noticing a lot of properties, a lot of land is being sold in Florida. So he's like, let me jump into it. Maybe I can make a profit. He offers investors tiny tracts of land, but some of these properties, some of these parts of land are underwater, right? He's doing whatever it takes to make money. So he's offering not so good property for sale. And he promises this time 200% return in 60 days.
Does he know these percentages that he's throwing out? Maybe he does not actually know what 200 is. You know, maybe we are blaming him and he does not understand.
He's been in America quite some time now.
I'm like...
He knows.
He's throwing out numbers. It's like he just sat down and is like, this.
200%. Let me see. Should I tell him 700% this time?
I know. It's like, do you even know what 200% means? 200% loss or profits?
Yes, in reality, it's a scam.
Yeah, you can see it unless you're stupid. How do you get 200%?
So, Charles is indicted by Duval County Grand Jury in February 1926, and he's in fact charged with violating Florida trust and securities laws. A jury finds him guilty on the securities charges, and the judge sentences him to a year in Florida State Prison. Charles has been in jail
I know, that's his
so many times.
Home. That is his home.
But Charles appeals his conviction and is freed after posting $1,500 bond. He's like, all right, let me travel to Tampa. He shaves his head, grows a mustache, and tries to flee the country. As a crewman on a merchant ship bound for Italy. He's like, I'm done. Finally, I will be done. Let me change my appearance and try to leave. Maybe no one will recognize me, so I can get back to my home.
Why couldn't he go with his own appearance?
They're not going to let him go like that.
So it's like he's just escaping.
Yes.
Because it was a bond. Charges were still on.
He's in trouble still. But as he's on this ship, he reveals his true identity to one shipmate. Unfortunately, the shipmate did not keep the secret. The word spreads enough to reach a deputy sheriff who follows the ship to its last American port in New Orleans, and Charles is arrested here. Charles, at this point, he pleads to Calvin Coolidge, the current president at this time, and Benito Mussolini, the leader of Italy at this time. He says, please allow me to be deported back to Italy. Both of them ignore. They're like, send him back to Massachusetts. You will serve your prison time in Massachusetts. Charles served 7 more years in prison. In the meantime, government investigators try to trace Charles's accounts to figure out how much money he actually took and where it basically went. They never managed to untangle it and could only conclude that millions of dollars gone through this man's hands at some point. We don't know where the money is. So Charles is finally released in 1934. There's an immediate order to deport him back to Italy. He asked for a full pardon. And basically what that means is once when you're convicted and you're a felon and so forth, certain citizen rights are taken from you, right? So maybe you can't vote, maybe you can't do this, maybe you can't do that. Asking for a full pardon kind of restores some of those things. But the Massachusetts governor, Joseph B. Ely, rejects it. He turns that appeal down. By this time, Charles's charisma, his confidence, that's all gone now, right?
As it should.
So he leaves the prison gates and he's met with an angry crowd. Tons of people out there waiting for him.
Of course, he's scammed a lot of people.
But by October 7th, Charles is officially deported back to Italy. His wife, though, Rose, she's like, I want to stay, and they divorce in 1937. She doesn't want to leave Boston, and Charles he's unable to support her. So they decide, you know what, it's best for us to part ways. In Italy, Charles jumps from idea to idea. Nothing comes from it.
Okay, so the only place to scam people is in America.
He eventually gets a job all the way in Brazil as an agent for an Italian state airline. During World War II, though, the airline's operation in the country, in Brazil, shuts down after the British intelligence services intervenes and Brazil sides with the Allies. Charles's health deteriorates. Right, he's getting older and he doesn't have much money. 1941, he has a heart attack and it leaves him very weakened. His eyesight begins to fail by 1948, and at this time he's like 65 years old and he's like almost completely blind. And a brain hemorrhage paralyzes his leg and arm. Charles spends his last years of his life in poverty as he works occasionally as a translator. Charles dies in a charity hospital in Rio de Janeiro on January 18th, 1949, at 66 years old. This is where the phrase Ponzi scheme comes from, the one you used earlier. Charles Ponzi.
Oh, he's Charles Ponzi.
Nice.
So the
Yes.
word Ponzi scheme
Comes
actually...
from him.
Oh, he's the one who... Oh my
That's
goodness.
where the phrase came from.
So I was right on track. It was just there when I said this is a Ponzi scheme. Oh my goodness.
I'm surprised you didn't catch on.
No, I didn't.
But it's such a phrase that people use.
Yeah,
They
people
may
just
not
say-
even know where it comes from.
Yeah, I didn't know where the phrase came from.
Yes, that's it.
Charles
Ponzi. No, Charles Ponzi.
Oh,
That was his last name, Ponzi.
His name was Ponzi.
Yes.
Oh, that's why they say
Ponzi scheme.
Interesting.
Yes.
Did you give me his second name when you started?
When I started, I said Charles Ponzi.
I didn't know. I didn't catch on.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That passed by like...
Yes.
Oh, sheesh. Now I know.
Yes.
Ponzi scheme.
Yes. Yes.
He tried though.
He did. He tried.
He tried. bad that he died early. I think he died early because of all the things that he just went
Hey,
through.
he lived a good life. He had a good point of his life that it was nice.
He flew his mom first class. He was like, Mom.
He had a nice car. He had a nice house. He lived a good life for a short period of time.
Just a month, though, I think.
Yes.
Just months is not enough. But also, I'm glad the mom died without
before seeing his downfall.
Yeah.
Because I think in her eyes, she's like, wow, my son actually bounced back from all that stuff. Because I mean, his mom is older. She doesn't know about this IRC stuff.
Yes.
She probably doesn't understand this stuff. So she's like, wow, you actually started a successful company? Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You're able to.
Yeah, that is what I remember when you were saying it and you said that she died. I was like, yeah, thank goodness she did not experience this. Yeah. Imagine going through that, seeing your son. Because I think he loved his mom. That's why even when he was arrested the first time, he said to the mom, oh, I'm just working here in prison as a translator.
And he also, like you said, he brought his mom over.
Yeah.
At first they were thinking, hey, Rose, do you want to go on a honeymoon?
Yeah.
No, he's like, no, I want to bring my mom home.
Yeah.
Or my mom over here. I want her to experience this with me.
Yeah.
He loved his mom.
And I think he didn't even want to disappoint the mom at any point.
Yeah.
But the mom, she lived nice, just a tiny bit.
Well, I mean, towards the end of her life, she did. She did live very nice.
Yeah, I think she died.
She died before his downfall.
Yeah.
So she died in a nice house, and
but
with
support. Still think he died early because of all the trouble.
Yes, of course.
Because generally, if he lived a good life, he would have lived more.
Yeah, he died in his 60s.
Yeah, that's early. Like, that's you're still young at that point. Mostly in those days people used to
living nice at that point.
Yeah, people used to live for a long time in those days. But 60s, his eyesight, he had like
because he was in poverty. He couldn't.
He could have just tried to live a normal life.
And some things he did fall into unfortunate situations. Like, for him to donate his skin to a fellow colleague, that is nice of him. Yeah. But it caused him to lose his job.
Yeah.
Or for the airline to shut down because of the events of World War II, right? Like,
it was like
Italy was Mussolini was, a huge force. So for the Italian airline to shut down in Brazil, that's another unfortunate thing, right? So he did fall on some hard luck too.
I think also he had a good heart, but then again, it's like...
It was at the expense of other people.
Yes, and then he was conflicted.
He was conflicted because at some point he was thinking, man, how can I actually make money for these people?
Return it.
I don't want to just take their money forever. Like, how can I ultimately make money from something else that can pay these people back? So I can actually keep this business, I can live a good life while also not gypping them out. Like, how do I get myself out of this?
But then again, he found himself still...
It's just like he found himself... He couldn't recover. Like, he was too deep.
But do you think even if he had a good nini at the back of his head, he was thinking, okay, I need to do this so that I can pay these people back and whatnot. Do you still think he felt bad for the people?
I think, yeah.
Because if he didn't feel bad, I think he wouldn't accept any more money.
No, but I think he felt bad, but I think he felt... So I think it's two things. I think he felt bad, but I don't think him feeling bad outweighed him feeling like, I'm going to get caught and ultimately this is going to go down in flames. He knew he had to eventually cover his behind.
But also, do you think he thought that he could survive it and actually make profit?
That's why he attempted to buy a macaroni company, a wine company. He attempted to start a conglomerate. Basically, it's like the 101 lesson of money laundering, right? What do you do to successfully money launder? You start a bunch of other companies that can kind of disguise that main company that is money laundering. Right? The whole thing that is really enabling you to steal money without successfully being caught. right? So it's like he tried to cover it up with other things to make it seem like, hey, like the money is here. But really it's like, I'm going to try to use source A to give you the money for source D.
Way you said stealing from Paul, giving it to Peter. That's what you said.
Basically.
Yeah.
Using the money from Paul to pay Peter.
Don't steal money from Paul to pay Peter. So this was a good story. That was a good one. And can't wait to hear the next one. So until next time. Bye.